Hey guys, fishing and stuff. Today, we're building an LED fishing light like you ain't never seen before. If you want to see what's so special about it, then you're gonna have to stick around. Today, I'm building an LED fishing light because I like using them for crappie fishing. I like using them for cast netting. Fishing lights at night work great for everything. I've got 2 more videos about LED fishing lights. One is a different DIY I done, and the other one is about how to use one because people's asked me so much. But the light I'm building today is different than any other one I've built, and I've built quite a few of them. It's just freaking awesome. This is one DIY I did multiple times. And speaking of DIYs, if you ain't checked out my channel page, go check it out. Because I normally do DIYs and you'll probably find something you like. And if you do, don't forget to click subscribe and click the bell. And subscribing is totally free. Well, that's enough time wasted talking. Let's get to work. So there's a lot of different lights you can use when you're crappie fishing. This is one of my lights that actually works pretty dang good to be so small. And I think I paid $20 for this off of Amazon. Which leads me to a question I get a lot. People ask me all the time, can you use white lights for crappie fishing? And the answer is yes. I use a white light a lot. You don't have to use green, but green's kind of the traditional color everybody uses. This light's little, but it's pretty dang bright. When you hang it in the water, it really lights it up pretty good. For some reason, it seems like I do better when I use a bigger light. Like it puts more light out in the water. So I like the big lights. This light here is the first light I ever made. And I just took LED strips, wrapped them around a piece of PVC. I put a piece of polypropylene over it. I think I'm saying it right, polypropylene. But it's just clear PVC basically. The light turned out good. But what happened was my light broke. And that's one of the downfalls of having the polypropylene. But I learned something when the light broke. And what I learned was that you don't really need the polypropylene. And I still use this light. But I mean, it's cracked and water can get in it. And it still works. Which leads me to my next light I made. The next light I made, I have a video about it. And it's at least a year old. But I made it and I give it to my buddy because he just bought him a boat. And we took it fishing on the video. And I mean, the light turned out great. And I didn't put any protective covering over it. I just put LED strip on PVC. Worked great. And all that leads me to the light I'm making today. The light I'm making today is going to be a little bit different. But I think it's going to turn out awesome. And if you see that right there, you'll notice that this is a 24 volt light strip. Now there's a reason I'm using a 24 volt light strip and not a 12. But if you want to make yours with a 12 volt light strip, this is a 12 volt waterproof light. But I'm using a 24 and you'll see why later. The voltage isn't as important as the light and what I'm going to do with it. And while I'm yapping, I just want to say one thing. Everybody asks me what kind of battery I use. Like in the bait well video, I was running it. And there's like, what kind of battery was you using? I was using one of these 12 volt deep cycle 7 amp hour kayak batteries. And I use these a good bit, especially on my kayak. I use them for the nav light, or actually both nav lights I made. And I used to take these fishing to run my lights on when I was crappie fishing. But the more I thought about it, you see most boats have a cranking battery. And they have trolling motor batteries. Most of the time, we're not using our trolling motor a lot at night. So what I started doing is I use my trolling motor batteries to run my light. All right, the next question I get a lot is, see this end? A lot of the LED strips are coming with this end on them. And people don't know what to do. Well, if you notice, the other side just has 2 wires. Well, those 2 wires is what we want. But I'm going to start from this side, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut this end off, and I'm going to strip it down to the 2 wires. I mean, that's just how I normally do it. I just cut this little sheathing off, get my 2 wires out, and then I can strip them down. But like I said, you can go from the other side if you'd rather do that. But you're going to have to unwind this whole roll to get to it. But our wires are ready. Now we gotta get our PVC ready. Now I got some wire from the hardware. I got 12 foot. That should be plenty for me. And it's not super big wire. It's something like you would use to wire up a lamp or something. And it may seem small, but look at how small this wire is. And this is a 24 volt light. If it's not gonna burn this wire up, it's not gonna burn this wire up either. 24 volts in AC is a lot different than 24 volts in DC. Plus there's resistance, like how long the wire is, all that. I'm not an electrician, I'm not getting into all that. But this wire should work. I got a tube of silicone. I'm using just clear silicone. Got my 2 end caps, and I got 2 foot of PVC. That should be enough to at least get me started. If the light's gonna be shorter than 2 foot, I'll cut it at the end and make it all work. But you want at least 2 foot so you'll have some that you can trim off. You see these little tabs right here? If you cut right in between those 4 little dots, up here where the wire is, it'll work all the way down to where you cut it. You can actually split this roll in half and make 2 lights out of it. Have 8 foot on one and 8 foot on the other. The first thing I like to do, I put one of my caps on. That way I can mark out where I want to drill my hole to run my wire through it. You gotta put the cap on good and tight, and it's a little hard to get back off when you're done. This makes your hole placement a lot better. And then we're gonna want to drill a hole in our cap. And the size you want it to be is whatever size wire you have. After your hole's drilled, you run your wire through your PVC. You run your other wire through your cap. Strip the ends, and now we're just gonna have to solder these two together. So after I got it all wired and soldered together, I put heat shrink tube on it. You can use tape if you want. Then I took some stainless steel wire I had and wrapped it around right here. So when it's put together and the cap's on, the wire can't pull through the cap. It'll hit this stainless steel wire and it'll stop, because it is supported by the wire when it's in the water. Next, I want to put silicone in here and silicone in the cap. And I'm gonna close this thing up. We're just doing that to keep the water out. So I put my whole LED strip on here, and I had this much left over from 2 foot. I'm gonna cut it right here so I have enough to put the cap on. Then we're gonna add silicone to the bottom, just like we did the top. And I'm gonna put a little weight in it so it floats vertically, because I don't want it laying horizontally up on top of the water. So we'll put about 4 ounces of weight in it. I like my light about 2 to 3 foot under the surface of the water. I usually take the cord and I wrap it around the cleat on my boat at the level I want it at. So now I'm gonna cut this end off, fill it up with silicone, put some weight in it, and put the cap on. These are PVC cutters. They work really good and they're fast. They're not that expensive. They're really worth investing into if you do a lot of PVC work. Or you can just use a hacksaw. Hacksaw works just as good. It's just a little bit messier and takes a little bit longer. So we got our light put together. We got both ends on. This keeps popping up. You can glue that down if you want, but you shouldn't have to, because the next thing I'm gonna do is a little bit different. Instead of polypropylene and instead of leaving it just plain, which is fine, I found some big heat shrink tube. It's pretty tough stuff, but it'll fit about on 1.5 inches. This is 1-inch PVC. With the end cap, it's about 1.25 inches. And I hope I don't damage my lights when I heat it to make it shrink. That's the only thing I'm worried about. But I'm gonna give it a shot, see how it works. Well, I don't believe it, but it freaking worked. So I got a protective layer over all of it. Clear shrink tube. That's pretty dang cool. You see how the silicone's running out this end? That's a good thing. That means it ain't gonna leak. That's why I put so much in it. It's also why I was telling you this little piece here, you could glue it down or just leave it, because this heat shrink tube's gonna hold everything on. On my last light, I put super glue every so many inches so it would help the adhesive backing hold better. But with this light, you don't need to do that, because this heat shrink tube's gonna hold everything tight. I think this is gonna be awesome. Next, we just need to wire up the end for the boat. On my boat, all my batteries are in the back. The cranking batteries over there, trolling motor batteries over here, chargers right there, but they're all in the back. There's nothing wrong with them being in the back, because it actually helps the performance of your boat. Because when you got more weight in the back, the boat's going to run a little bit faster. When you put weight in the front, it's going to ride deeper in the water. The problem is my rod rack and my bimini top's in the back too, so it's kind of hard to get back there to the batteries. I mean, it's not impossible. It's just a little more aggravating than on my old boat. Well, I got to thinking, what if I could just unplug the trolling motor? What if I could unplug the trolling motor? Pull it out and use this socket to run my green light at night. If you think about it, it's really perfect. You don't use a trolling motor much at night. I mean, I use it some at night, like for catching shad or something like that, but I don't use it like I do during the day. I got two 12-volt batteries that I could run my light off of, and those lights don't pull a lot of juice anyway. Plus, if you could plug it in here, you wouldn't have to fight that rod rack and that bimini top to get to the batteries in the back. So my solution was, if it works, I went and bought another plug just like the one on my boat for my trolling motor for my fishing light. And actually, these aren't dirt cheap or nothing, so it ends up being the most expensive thing on the build. But it's just for convenience, and I think I'm gonna like it. So the next step is to hook my light to this plug. So now, when you're on the water, if you want to use a green light, you just unplug your trolling motor, take your green light plug, line it up and plug it in, and boom, your green light works. That right there is cool. I don't care what you say. Kind of hard to tell in this bright garage. Let's see how bright this thing is. Yeah, I'd say it's pretty bright. Yeah, that right there is going to work. Like I said before, in case you're wondering, I use 12 foot. But you're going to have to do yours according to how much length you need on your wire. But all I got to do is get from my plug to this cleat right here. And I got plenty of wire to do that. I really think I'm going to like this light a lot. I love the heat shrink tube on it. The way it protects all of it and it can't bust. And I love the plug. No more climbing back to the back of the boat to get to the batteries. Who would have ever even thought that they made 24-volt LED strips? They make everything. Well, this fishing light turned out awesome, and I really can't wait to use it. You can build your own LED fishing light a lot cheaper than what I spent. I've got about 50 bucks into mine, but the reason I got that much into it was because of the awesome shrink tubing I used. And this right here, this was the most expensive part of this whole light. But this makes it all more convenient. But you can build this project with a 12-volt LED. You don't need the shrink tubing. I mean, you can build your own fishing light pretty cheap. And I do have another video about it, don't forget. You can check it out. And check out the video I got about how to use one if you need help with it. A fishing light is an awesome tactic for catching bait, catching crappie, catching bass. Look guys, if you like this video, click that like button. And if you're not subscribed, then what you waiting on? And as always, I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you on the next build.